Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, where we dive into the stories behind the business owners, founders, and leaders who didn't necessarily set out to become entrepreneurs, but did it anyway. Today, I'm joined by Forrest Derr, an experienced operations executive and the founder of Derr Consulting, a firm specializing in fractional COO and EOS Integrator services for growing companies. Forrest has spent over 2 decades transforming organizations across industries from telecommunications to landscape services and digital media. In the first half of our conversation, Forrest shares his entrepreneurial journey from delivering newspapers as a kid to becoming a trusted operational leader and board member for multiple companies. He opens up about the highs and lows of stepping out on his own and the lessons he's learned along the way. In the second half, we dig into the strategies he uses to help founders scale without the cost or the chaos of full-time leadership teams. We'll explore EOS, operational alignment, and what it really takes to turn vision into results. Whether you're leading a startup or thinking about bringing in outside help to help level up your business, this episode is packed with actionable insights. Let's get started. Hey, Forrest, thanks for joining me today. Happy to have you here.
Great to be here. Appreciate the invite.
And did we nail it with the intro? Everything correct? I didn't over or under embellish anything?
Nope. Think you did great. Think it sounded awesome.
Awesome. Good. Let's begin at the beginning. And that would be, you began, like me, actually, with you began your entrepreneurial career with a paper route. And I'll tell you, I don't know about you, I had 105 papers, 7 days a week, and they would deliver the papers, and then they would deliver in a bunch of separate bundles, all the inserts that they wanted to go in the paper, right?
And Sundays were horrible.
Sundays were 2 trips on the bike. I managed to get all my papers into I had the double saddle, with the bags on each side, and I couldn't even, if I had to, for whatever reason, get off my bike, I couldn't rely on the kickstand. It would just fall over. So I would just lean it over. And the bags were so wide that the bike was only about like that. It wasn't on its side. It was awful. 7 days a week, and I made an average of about $50 a month doing that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, I remember those days. And I was conniving or entrepreneurial enough to convince my parents to get up on Sundays. And after I packed my papers, I actually rode around on the back of a 1982 Caprice station wagon with the tailgate down.
Nice.
So they would drive around, and I'd throw the papers in the mailbox.
I'll tell you, I was never good at baseball, but I should have been because I got the throw down, right? I mean,
that's right.
And back in those days, you were required to get it on the porch, right? Now, they'll just throw it on the driveway. They don't care.
Yeah.
But from the curb, I could nail it on the porch, and you couldn't hit the door. You didn't want to bang into the screen door. It had to land on the porch, and newspapers, not quite the most aerodynamic thing. So you got to have this special kind of arm, special aim.
Yes, you got to have that twing,
That twing, and they have to kind of do this so they land where they're supposed to land. Those were fun days.
All without safety and no helmets or anything like that.
No helmets at all. And I got screwed every month because the way my paper worked is I had to do the monthly collection. So I would have to go door to door every month.
Same kid.
I would get a bill for the papers delivered. So I had, 105 papers a day delivered. Mm-hmm. But if only 85 of those people paid for it, I got to keep the difference between what I collected and what I had to pay for the papers. So I was the one short, and I could turn them in, but it took like 6 months, and then they'd eventually pay you. They just wore you down. I don't even think that would be legal today, the way...
Well, the child labor wouldn't be illegal. I mean, if I was doing that at 14 years old.
Yeah,
I couldn't
me too.
Do that now.
Yeah, 13, 14, something like that. I was glad. And the worst days were Sundays when it's raining because they sent little plastic sleeves. You had to put every paper in the plastic sleeve. And, it was just a pain. I'm so glad those days are over. Building a business is nothing compared to running a paper route 7 days a week for $50 a month. So,
it is not. Yeah.
So you went from humble beginnings of a paper route, and then you climbed to VP of operations and at a corporation, and then you founded Derr Consulting. There was probably some stuff in the middle there.
Yeah.
What key mindset shifts or lessons enabled that progression from flinging newspapers to working in the corporate world to, as I like to say, jumping into the deep end of the cold pool and starting your own business? Take me through that.
Yes, it's definitely when you get into the corporate world and you're working in a business with lots of people, hiring and firing takes on a whole new life. Paper out, you don't have to have any employees. In fact, you don't have any employees, but moving into the corporate world where you're actually having to hire and fire employees takes on a totally different skill set. And I was fortunate enough to have a leader in the company at the time that let me take the reins of leading a small operations team. And I very distinctly remember him telling me that I'm going to put you in this spot so you can learn how to hire and fire people. Because if you screw up and make a bad hire or make a bad fire, it's really easy to replace that level of person than it is once you get higher up in the corporate world.
Fail fast, kind of when it comes to people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fail often and fail fast. Yeah.
I agree. In the early days of my business, we build equipment, so we're in a factory setting. And a lot of the procedures, particularly in the very early days, were tribal, right? They weren't SOPs. I didn't even know what SOP stood for, right? So everything was tribal. And the worst thing that would happen is someone would be there for so long, they knew how to do something. They were the only one that knew how to do something. They were the world's worst employee, but you couldn't fire them because there was no one else that could do it, not even me.
Yeah.
And so it's a good idea to look for the warning signs. We start off with 90-day probation periods, right? And in California, where I am, we're a so-called at-will employer, so we can let anyone go for any legal reason at any time. In fact, technically, we'd be fools if we did this, but technically, we don't even have to give a reason. We can just say, okay, Forrest, thanks, here's your last check, good luck.
Yeah.
Now, we open ourselves up to all sorts of potential liability if we do that. I do agree. If an employee's not going to work out, it's a lot easier before they're totally entangled into the corporate structure. And then they know things. They know where all the skeletons are buried, and no one else knows that. What had inspired you to start Derr Consulting and embrace the fractional COO, Chief Operational Officer model? And how did you validate that this was a viable business need in the first place?
Yeah. So what I figured out when I found EOS at the telecom company I worked for, where I was the integrator, and through that process of reading traction and learning about EOS, I figured out that I had been a closet integrator pretty much all my life. So I worked in a gas station during college, and during that time, I changed processes and procedures, changed how we ordered supplies, changed how we checked in inventory, and I was solving problems and improving processes all along the way. When I moved into the furniture company, same thing. I was constantly looking for how to improve things, how to make things better, and how to make the business more profitable and integrate technology to automate and streamline processes. And so it was natural for me to do that, but then natural for me to have conversations with other business owners that were customers or vendors of the businesses I was working in. So as I look back at history, I was kind of being a fractional chief operating officer of people over a free lunch and coffee for many years.
You work for food, yeah. Sure.
We work for food, yeah. We work for the coffee. And I've had people tell me, he said, I would pay you if you would help me do this on the side. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to do that. I'm happy to just help you the way we are. And just over time, as I continue to see the businesses that I was working in full time growing and scaling, I was like, man, there's a big need for this out there. These small business owners, $1 to $2 to $10 million that just don't have the operational structure and processes in place. I really felt like there was a gap there, and it was validated as I continued to talk to people where they kept encouraging me that, yeah, you really should do this. This is a good path to go because you're good at finding opportunities and issues within businesses.
It's interesting how only with perspective, only with altitude, when we look back, we can see how all the stars aligned, right? We can see that we were being trained for something that we had no idea we were being trained for, right? And up until the time, like when I started my business, and it sounds like yours too, it almost seemed like a random set of events, right? That disconnected events. And
Yep.
looking back, it's like, oh no, this was almost like destiny. I was I was born to do this. I had no idea. No one shared the plan with me, right? And but by the time I made the leap into the deep end of the cold pool, I had some degree, not enough, not nearly enough, but I had some degree of skill set that, based on all the experiences I had before. Yet I didn't make a conscious decision like, hey, I know this and this and this, therefore I should do that. It just, I kind of fell into it, hence the name Reluctant Entrepreneur. And speaking of helping, you've helped growing companies avoid full-time executives or executive costs by offering up to 8 to 10 hours a week of fractional COO support. What are the biggest advantages and also pitfalls? I mean, everything comes with some kind of degree of trade-off. Clearly, I can throw out one advantage that I can see from here, from this end of the camera. You don't have 40-hour a week salary. You have an 8-hour a week salary. But what are the other advantages, and what are the potential pitfalls that someone needs to be aware of before they consider that as an option?
Yeah, I would say the advantages are definitely the cost. To have a full-time chief operating officer is going to be significantly more expensive than having a fractional. But at the same time, the advantage of having a fractional is that you've got somebody that has experience in other industries and seeing lots of different things in lots of different ways. And so a fractional can bring a perspective that an internal employee that grows up in the business will have blinders on, so they won't necessarily see the things that an outsider perspective would have. On the downside, I guess the problems or challenges that you would have having a fractional is you can become pretty reliant on that fractional, and then it becomes difficult when that fractional does not want to stay long term. I've had a couple of my clients that have asked me. I've got one that asked me every other week, when are you going to come on full time? Man, if you'd be 40 hours, we could do so much together. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not where I want to be. I want to help you find that person that's going to be that second in command for you. So it is challenging to, get attached to that relationship. That
Sure.
called the visionary integrator relationship is a tight relationship, and finding somebody to replace yourself is a challenge.
In your company at Derr Consulting, is it just you that's doing the consulting, or do you have other fractional COOs that you hire and place?
So at the moment, as of today, it is just me, but I am working with a couple of different team members that I'm building the option to add them into the fold. So I've got a couple of client opportunities that are out with proposals where if they land, then I would have, I would call a boots on the ground COO that would work with a client once a week. And then I would work with the client as well as my COO that's in there once a month on strategy. So the goal is to start actually scaling that business.
Yeah, because at the moment, your business is like a restaurant with 10 tables.
Mm-hmm.
Once the 10 tables are occupied all through lunch and dinner, that's a cap. I mean, you can only raise your prices so much. I mean, at the moment, it's limited to a certain amount of revenue and profit. So is it your goal over time? It sounds like it is, but is it your goal over time to scale it by bringing in more people? And do you have a specific scale limit in your head, or do you see one day when you can have 500 or 1,000 fractional COOs out there and act like an agency by placing these experts in locations where they're needed?
Well, I'm actually working through that right now. So I have a executive coach that I work with every couple of weeks, and we actually had a call before this, and so I'm thinking through what that looks like. I don't see myself getting to have an agency with 500 fractionals. I could see myself as an agency with 5 fractionals working with me on clients because I think the process that I've gone through to build my LinkedIn profile, as well as the reputation that I've got in the EOS community, I think I can leverage that to add additional fractionals where it would be more difficult for them to go find business on their own. So,
I wasn't planning on asking you this, but you mentioned you have a business coach. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Your coaching, in essence, you're doing the work in coaching your clients, and now
Right.
the coach is getting coached. I'm a
Yeah.
huge proponent of that. I used to belong to, in my 33 years in business, I belonged to a CEO peer group, a couple of different ones at different times, where
Like Vistage or
like
something like that.
Vistage was one of
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
and the other there was another one, I think Executive Forums or something like that. And I humorously, I kind of mean this a little bit, but it's a little bit tongue in cheek. People go, well, what's that all about? I said, well, it's like 10 or 12 CEOs that get together once a month and lie to each other about how well they're doing, right? And then every 6 months or once a year, whatever, I think it's about once a year, we have to come in and
Tell the truth.
tell the truth because we have to bring all our numbers in. And that I was more nervous about that than anyone else. I mean, I was more nervous and anxious to share with them the good truth or ugly truth, depending on the quarter or the year. I was more nervous than if I was in front of a loan committee at a bank, right? Because these guys, they're all running businesses. They all have opinions. They all have their strategies. They can be very judgy, but also very helpful, right? In a like a tough love kind of way, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually, I left that model, and even to this day, well, I'm semi-retired now, so I don't meet with our consultant anymore. But she's more of a mentor, and I do think that we don't know what we don't know, and sometimes you just need someone unattached to the outcome that can see what we're going through from just a different perspective. And
we have blinders on, and we can't see.
We totally have blinders on.
We can't see. I use this illustration when I'm talking to people. I'm like, Tiger Woods. You can like him or hate him. He had a coach. He is and has been one of the greatest golfers. But while he's swinging that golf club, he can't see the minute changes that need to happen. And so if somebody like that, the Michael Jordans, the Tiger Woods, if they're going to have a coach, why wouldn't a business executive or a business leader have a coach? So she's been very instrumental in seeing things that I haven't seen. And also, to your point of not having a vested interest or, not being somebody that reports to you, she can call you out on the carpet and tell you, you're being stupid. You're not looking at this right, or why. One thing she's challenging me right now is, why are you limiting yourself with the vision of where you want to go with the business? Why can't you have more? Why can't you do more?
That's where my head was at first. When you said it's just you, I'm just like,
yeah. That's exactly the process I'm going through right now. Is trying to figure out, what does that look like, and how does that scale, and how do I build the business? Because I'm the bottleneck right now. I'm the bottleneck, and I'm the product. And I help people build scalable, sellable businesses to build equity value with recurring revenue. And I've got a lifestyle business right now. I can't sell my business. Nobody would buy my business right now.
Right, because you're the product.
I'm the product. I'm the product. So that's one of the things that I'm working through right now, and I'm early in the process. But absolutely.
I like the fact, though, that you seem to be, at least from this perspective, quite deliberate about that. I was more all in, just grow. Everything was about growth. That's one reason I kind of left the Vistage and other models was there was such an emphasis on growth. And it turns out I'm a really good salesman. I can bring in business. When cash was really bad, when we were worried about payroll the following week, my bookkeeper would say, Mike, we need more business. We need more cash. We need more down payments. And I would get them. It would not be profitable, Forrest, but that wasn't my problem today. That's tomorrow's problem. I'll worry about that tomorrow. I was able to compartmentalize all of the things I had to work on and not look at a big picture, right? I just said, okay, need more cash? I'll bring in cash. I'll do a money-losing deal, but we can cover payroll next week, right? And sometimes you do need that larger, wider perspective. But I do respect the fact that, unlike me, you didn't start it with the immediacy of build, because then it's really easy to lose control. And I'm sure that's why people hire you, because they're probably in a position where they're growing too fast, they're growing beyond their skill level, and
Yep.
and they're identifying that they don't know certain things that they need to know.
Yeah.
You've led in sectors, quite a number of diverse sectors like telecom, software as a service, and even landscaping businesses.
Yeah.
How do you adapt your leadership and operational approaches across various industries? Is a COO a COO, and it doesn't matter what they're making, or are there nuances and things like that, and different skills required in different industries?
Yeah, I think there's definitely nuances in industry knowledge that's helpful, but at the end of the day, from a COO perspective, it's people, process, and structure. It doesn't matter whether you're mowing the grass. It doesn't matter whether you're, servicing jujitsu clients as a coach, or CrossFit, which is another industry I've worked in, or whether it's telecom or SaaS. You got to have the right people, you got to have processes in place, and you got to have structure in the business. And a COO that is skilled and seasoned is going to go in there and see things that owner, visionary founder is not going to see. They're going to pull up the carpet and find the areas where the foundation is weak that needs to be shored up. And so at the end of the day, I've had some people challenge me, well, how can you help me? I mean, I'm working with a client right now that's got a, USDA cow processing plant. And he's like, how, you've never processed cows? I'm like, nope, sure haven't. But you know what? I can talk through how you're doing your finances, how you're doing your marketing, how you're getting your right people in the right seed, how you're training them. It's not about the cow. It's not about the grass cutting. It's about the people, process, and structure.
Right. If they have a cow problem, they're uniquely qualified. But if they have a business problem, yeah. So it's a question of identifying your specific skill set, and more importantly, identifying what skills you don't have. Right. When I built my business, I thought I had all the skills required to run a business. It turned out I had none of them, but I did have a specific technical skill set, which I needed for my industry. So I had that. Because I had that, I thought I had everything else covered. I thought, well, I've learned the hard stuff. Everything else is easy. It turned out what I knew was easy. It was just, it was natural to me, and business was not natural to me. And I didn't want to get bogged down with boring business stuff and SOPs and procedural things.
That's exactly where our fractional CEO comes in, because, you as an excellent salesperson have a technical background, and, this guy figured out cows, et cetera. It's, they've, as visionaries and founders of businesses, you have focused on what you do well. And I use the term brute force. And, I've used this over and over again when I sit down and talk to a client, and they're like, I'm struggling with this, this, and this. And I'm like, look, here's the deal. You have been successful with brute force. You have been pushing and working so hard to be successful, and you have been successful. But now you're at an inflection point. You're at the $1 million mark, and you can't make it past $1 million because you don't have the people, process, and structure. That's where that fractional COO can come in and give clarity to everybody in the business. And so many businesses I work with, I'll ask a handful of questions, and the owner, the founder, they know where the business is going and they know where they want it to go. But most of the employees have no clue where the business is or where they're going. And when you can crystallize what that vision is and get everybody rowing in the same direction, that's where the magic starts to happen. And the founder has a business instead of a job.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you some questions about EOS, but for the sake of my audience, and I had to ask you this when we had our discovery call, what the heck is EOS? Because I hadn't heard that acronym before. What the heck is EOS? What is it? What's it an acronym for? And give me a 30,000-foot view of what that's about.
Sure. And if you look it up on Amazon, there's a book called What the Heck is EOS, believe it or not. And it tells you exactly what it's like 100 pages or whatever.
Well titled, yes.
Yeah, well titled. So EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so in the Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's a framework on how to build a scaling business. And typically EOS works well in businesses that are 10 to 250 employees. So if you got 2 employees, it's going to be hard to use it. You got 500, it's going to be really hard to use it. But that 10 to 250 range, which is probably most of the small businesses in the United States,
I'll bet it
that's
is.
the challenge, is how do they scale and how do they build a framework? And a guy named Gino Wickman wrote a book called Traction. And in that book, he laid out the foundational principles for how to run a business. How do you get the right people in the right seat? How do you create a clear vision? How do you make sure you have a data points and scorecard for measuring success? How do you make sure you have processes in place, regular meetings, right people, right seat? And it's a framework that everyone can follow. And it's interesting because most people that they read about EOS and they learn about it, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. And it's really not anything revolutionary. It's just good business practices. And EOS has done a really good job of creating a system to follow rather than trying to go find a bunch of pieces and put it together. They've systematized how do you run and scale a business. And that's what EOS is.
So as an EOS integrator at Sexton and at ENRG, is that an acronym for something? Yeah, ENRG. What early wins validated that EOS was the right system, and what challenges did you face early on with that implementation?
So with Sexton, they had already implemented EOS, but they had self-implemented and had some real challenges in the process of implementation. And so, one of the early wins I had there, and it's funny, when I joined that company, the company was established, I think had 60 employees at the time, and I was brought in as the COO integrator, and a lot of people were confused as to what I was doing, why I was there. I was labeled as a spy. I was labeled as a company hatchet man. There was a couple different terms that were used for me that were probably unsavory. But in the process of that, what I did is I just went in and asked questions. I spent about 3 weeks just riding along with people and asking questions. And, one of the big wins that I got out of that, early wins, was they had implemented EOS and they had lots of meetings, which are called L10 meetings. And one of the guys was in 7 different L10 meetings a week. Well, an L10 is 90 minutes. So he was in 7 different meetings, 90 minutes at a time. There wasn't much time for work.
That's right.
And so in the process of discovering
that's like 12 or
people,
13 hours out of a 40-hour week, right? That's crazy.
And this guy also was doing sales. So he was not able to be successful. He was set up for failure. And so identifying what seats need to be in the organization, putting the right person in the right seat, and then getting people dialed into the meeting. So we reduced him down to he was only in 2 meetings. He was in a leadership team meeting, and then he was in a sales meeting. And that was a real easy win and a real visual for everybody that, hey, I'm not here to create problems. I'm here to remove obstacles. I'm here to solve problems. And so as an integrator, that's what I do.
I like what you said about spending time asking questions. I'm a big believer in a management philosophy. I don't know if this is like a published philosophy or just something I picked up or someone told me. I don't remember. But I call it MBWA, Management by Walking Around. And it's amazing that if I just went onto the factory floor and just made it a mission to talk to every single person on the floor, not in an official, I got 10 questions to ask you capacity, just what's going on? It's amazing what you learn. Just subtle things. And sometimes it's about someone else's department, right? Because people like to talk about other departments because they all have wisdom over the other department, right? That they don't have on their own. But I would make a point every morning when I was more involved with the company to kind of do the MBWA thing, management by walking around. And I would spend the first hour just shooting the breeze. And sometimes I got nothing, no insight out of it, but many times I did. And because I had a routine of doing that, I could tell when I was walking around, say, Bob, I can see Bob's eyes were lighting up when I was approaching him because he had already decided what he was going to tell me. He was excited to tell me something or whatever the case may be because they knew. And they knew that I had a regularity on this kind of walking around thing. And you learn a whole lot more. I learned a whole lot more in that environment than I would like in a conference room business meeting, where
Very
everyone is trying to sound good in front of their peers and me.
right.
And, so it was extremely casual, but I did learn a lot from that process.
Very,
So,
very similar. I've had that similar experience when I worked at the office furniture company. I would have a routine where I would go out and sweep the floor in the warehouse as the VP of operations in the afternoons while everybody was loading their trucks, just sweeping the floor.
yeah,
And it showed them that I was not going to ask them to do something that I wouldn't do. But to your point, amazing how many things I garnered from watching, observing, but also just somebody come up to me, hey, let me show you this. I changed this procedure on how we're loading the trucks. I want to show you how it works.
yeah,
And so, yeah,
yeah. It's amazing. And I think it also, in addition to me learning, it also, I think, is good, as you said, for the staff to see you're a regular person. You're not some person in an ivory tower, right? You go down and have coffee with them, and you shoot the breeze with them, and every once in a while I would bring a cigar to work because we had a few smokers, out there in their break smoking cigarettes, and I just go out there and light up a cigar, and they're just looking at me like, because the boss is having cigars with me. But
yeah, yeah.
but it's good camaraderie, team building, things like that. So you've spent a decade on boards, on company boards, from what I understand, as secretary, VP, president, treasurer, and with educational groups. How has that shaped your view of leadership and business growth?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. So I've been on a school board, a couple of different business group boards, and just being able to see different aspects of how that boardroom works and how that applies to the factory floor, as you said, has been very rewarding for me. The other side of it that's been beneficial is seeing the finance side and seeing how the finances work on those organizations to be able to understand the ins and outs and the P&Ls and the balance sheets and the financial projections and setting targets and goals. So it's been very interesting to be a part of that process.
What's the 90 platform?
So 90 is a software platform that I use with my clients that helps you manage EOS. So it's a software that actually helps you drive the meetings, drive the accountability chart, manage the workflows and to-dos, and make sure that people are getting projects done. And so it's the system, the software that you can use to manage the EOS system.
Well, you've mentioned, the reason I asked that is you've mentioned in either on your website or past interviews that the 90 platform has been a complete game changer in driving vision and accountability and results through your company.
Yeah.
What's your advice for leaders looking to introduce tools like this, whether it's the 90 platform or whatever else works? What's your best advice on that?
My best advice is to find what works for them and try to reduce the amount of tools. So one of the first things I do when I walk into a company that I'm working with is let's diagram the tech stack. What are you using for software? And it's mind-boggling how many applications companies are using. And if you ask one person to map it, they create a map. You ask another person, you get a totally different map.
Sure.
And there's lots of applications that are being used that are not the right tools, or there's too many tools. So my big advice is less is more. So reduce the number of applications down as few as you can to get the business done, and figure out how to tie your applications together. 90 is a really good tool for EOS in particular because it has everything in there. It has your vision documented so that everybody knows where the company's going over the next 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, 90 days. It has your rocks, which are your 90-day projects. It has your meetings for how you track your meetings with a timer for 90 minutes each week. So that's why I use it a lot and have a lot of success, especially working in, let's see, right now I'm working in 6 different businesses. So as I reset my brain one night and think about what I'm doing the next day, I have to go back and look in 90 to figure out where I left off and what things we need to accomplish that day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to EOS, you told me what
Yeah.
EOS is, entrepreneurial
Operating system.
operating system, and you're an EOS integrator. What is an integrator? What does an integrator do
Yeah,
on top of the whole EOS system?
Yeah. So an integrator is really the COO in an EOS company. So an integrator is the second in command. He works with the visionary, which is typically the founder. So you have a visionary who founded the business. Typically, they have the ideas where the business is going. They took the risk to start the business, and then you have an integrator that comes in and gets the business structured and organized and leads the leadership team, leads ops, finance, marketing, sales to get everybody rowing in the right direction. An integrator doesn't implement EOS. An integrator is inside the business working on a regular basis, either fractionally like myself on a weekly basis or full time. There is also an EOS implementer that is outside of the business that comes in once a quarter to help implement EOS, run the quarterly meetings, make sure people understand the concepts and tools, and teaches EOS.
Is that you as well? Are you also an implementer?
I am not, I
No.
am not an implementer. So the companies I work with either have an implementer or they have self-implemented. They may have self-implemented 3 or 4 years ago, and they've just got to a point where they need an integrator to tighten things up. But I'm not an implementer.
So if a company is looking for an integrator, what are the maybe top 2 or 3 traits that they should look for? I mean, besides just going, Forrest is our man.
Yes. Yeah.
Besides that,
Yeah.
what if you were knowing what you know about EOS integration,
Yeah.
and if you worked at a company and they said, "Okay, Forrest, hire us an integrator,"
Yep.
what would you look for in terms of
What's
experience
interesting
or
is-
traits?
Yeah, so it's interesting. That's what my business model is. I work with businesses as that fractional integrator, and I help them find a full-time integrator.
Okay. So what do you look for then?
Yeah. So I'm looking for somebody that understands finance, because they've got to own the P&L and balance sheet. They've got to have an understanding of sales as well as operations, as well as marketing. So they've got to be jack of all trades is not quite what I would say, but they need to understand the major components of business. But at the end of the day, that integrator needs to be comfortable being second in command. Most people want to be in the first seat. They want to be the CEO. An integrator is not going to be the CEO. An integrator is going to be that chief operating officer. They might be president. I was president at one company while I was an integrator. But from a characteristic standpoint, they've got to be willing and able to translate the vision from the visionary and make sure everybody understands what the vision is and make sure everybody has the tools and resources needed to be successful. One of the 5 bullet points on the job description for an integrator is to remove obstacles. That's one of the big bullet points that you have to own the P&L, but you got to remove obstacles. And so when you go into a business as an integrator, you've got to be able to see obstacles, managed by walking around, and then you've got to figure out how to remove obstacles. And that's how a business is successful with an integrator, is removing those obstacles.
Remote fractional executives are increasingly common. We practice that through a number of means at our company. We have a PEO model where none of our employees, including myself, are actually employees of our company, technically.
Right.
We use another company to hire all of our staff. We control the staff. We control the pay. We hire and fire.
Right.
But the employer of record is a much larger
On
company.
paper, yeah.
On paper, right. And we do that for the economy of scale for benefits, workers' comp, medical, dental, all that stuff. We can offer Fortune 500 level benefits even as a small company. But that means that we have, we kind of have a fractional HR person and a fractional legal team and things like that. We do quite a bit of software development in our company. And I used to have a software coder on staff. The problem is our projects come and go. So
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm not a come and go kind of employer. I don't like to hire and fire, I like to keep people on. So we use fractional coders, and I don't think that's their title, but we hire out, and the same with very specific kind of one-off mechanical engineering or certain types of engineering that we might need for a new project. I'll just do someone willing to come in for a short period of time. I'll fly them out. I'll put them up in a hotel if they need to for a few months, and then bye-bye, and
Yeah.
it was set that way. The expectations were that, so I'm a big fan of fractional. But how do you ensure if a company is going to hire a fractional whatever, whether it's EOS integrator or a CFO or whatever the case may be, how do you ensure that the influence, trust, and productivity when that person is only in the business part-time and working remotely?
Yeah.
How can a company really know this person really is part of the team? And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a challenge for some.
Yeah, it is definitely a challenge, but I think that goes back to getting that person involved in meeting people and being in meetings and asking questions and learning about the business. So, as a fractional, the fractional's job is to really understand where this company is going and where the challenges are and where their opportunities are. So, you've got to engage them in the business. I have worked in companies that have, for example, had a fractional CFO that basically just sent financial reports once a month and was not in any meetings and was not having regular conversations with the leadership team. And it showed because they let that fractional CFO go because he was just not understanding the business. He was robotically doing reports, and that was not what was needed. So you have to really engage that fractional with the leadership team at some type of level. Is it a weekly basis? Is it a monthly basis? Is it biweekly? There's got to be some type of regular cadence so that fractional is plugged into the business.
What operational frameworks have you found most effective when helping businesses scale? Are there systems or metrics that you use across clients, consistent metrics that you use across a variety of clients, or is it relevant to specific industries, or how do you adjust that?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging across industries because there are different metrics. For example, the landscaping industry, we use something called SPH, which was sales per hour for the field workers, and the field workers, how much dollars they could produce on a weekly basis, dollars per hour. It wasn't that they were out there selling, but it was really kind of revenue per hour. Being able to track that from a productivity standpoint was very important in that production mindset. Whereas in the telecom space, we were looking more about what the revenue per employee was on an annualized basis. And so it really, you've got to tie revenue to how much overhead you've got. You've got to tie revenue to how much AR you've got. So there's some overarching themes that you got to watch out for, but each business is a little bit different that you've got to understand what is the lever or what is the metric that you need to track to be able to know what levers to push to increase the profitability of the business.
So in any business, your business is relatively new. So maybe you haven't gotten there yet, but I absolutely guarantee you will. You're going to face challenges. You're going to face potential burnout. You're going to make mistakes.
Yep.
You're going to experience some degree of failure and success. What's your mechanism for avoiding burnout and facing challenges? And I know even if you haven't experienced those yet in this business, you have in the corporate world, right? So how do you have a particular go-to technique to kind of work through that? I mean, your job is to remove obstacles for other people, but there's no one there to remove them for you. So how do you get around that?
A couple ways. One, having an executive coach is tremendously powerful to help guide and see things that you're not going to see. But then the other one is having peer groups. I mean, you mentioned earlier having Vistage and things like that. So I'm in several different peer groups where I met with one this morning that's 11 integrators that we meet once a month. And having that group that I can meet with once a month, and even if I don't share anything, listening to them share something resonates with me, and it helps you understand that you're not the only one that's going through it, and you can get wisdom from hearing how other people help each other solve problems. So peer groups and executive coach are the two my go-to right now.
Yeah, I think it's very easy for entrepreneurs, people who start companies, to feel very lonely and isolated from the rest of the world. You're spending, generally every waking moment and probably half your sleeping moments, either, thinking about the business or dreaming about the business or whatever. And you're responsible for, if you have employees, you're responsible
Right.
for, ensuring they can make their house payment and, put braces on their kids' teeth and all that stuff and eat. In your world, you don't have employees, but you're still responsible to make sure that your customers who pay you, you're making the best decisions for them and you're not leading them, off a cliff. That's a lot of pressure. It can be a lot of pressure. What do you do for, when you're not working? Are you able to disengage, or are you full-time thinking about work even when you're on vacation with your family?
Yeah. I will say that I'm better now over the last 6 months.
It's a journey, right?
It is a journey. I mean, the first couple of months were real tough. Constantly thinking about the business and worrying about the business and am I going to be successful? I'm in a better place than I was now. But one of the things that I do is I bass fish. So I go bass fishing, and that's an outlet for me to relax. I may not catch a lot of fish, but just being out on the water and just relaxing and seeing a bald eagle fly by or whatever is a good time for me to decompress and download. So that's my outlet.
My wife and I would go on regular vacations to Mexico. I'm in Southern California, so Mexico is just one wrong turn down the freeway.
Yeah.
And my staff would absolutely hate it when I came back, because I was able to disconnect. It took a couple days. We were there for a week.
Yeah.
It took a couple days to kind of disconnect and have the tequila running through my veins and cigars and all that. But I would get kind of in a new zone. I'm not so much thinking about the business in a how we're going to survive kind of sense, but I'm thinking about possibilities and
dreaming.
All these ideas would come in, and my staff hated it because I would come back all pumped up. I would come back meeting, and they always used to compare me to Michael Scott in The Office, the Office character, Michael Scott, because I was a little dorky. But I would come back and I would have, and this, and this, and this, and this, and I would just be like full of ideas. And, after a couple weeks back at work, half those ideas, just evaporated. They weren't very good ideas, but they sounded good, with tequila and a warm pool in Mexico. But
so that's what an integrator does, is an integrator filters those ideas.
Yeah.
So if you had an integrator, you would bring those ideas, the integrator would review those and filter those before they got to the rest of the team.
Yeah. I'm sure my staff, not knowing what an integrator was, they probably had wished, if they knew now, they would probably wish they should have hired an integrator to stand between me and them. But they were the integrators, the unwitting integrators in that context. Do you have a few daily or weekly habits that you'd recommend for founders or anyone considering starting a business to improve, or even as a leader in a business, maybe they don't even own it, looking to improve organizational alignment and operational excellence? What would be, besides just, calling Derr Consulting, any basic tricks?
Two things that I work with my clients on and the whole leadership team. One is taking a regular clarity break. So you were talking about a clarity break that's a week or two. That's great if you can do that. But just taking a solitary hour a week and sitting away from your desk, i.e. in a coffee shop somewhere else, and thinking about the business, it's amazing how many problems you can solve. And it's called a clarity break in EOS. So that's number one. But then number two is, and I would say equally important, is a process called Delegate Elevate. And once a quarter, sit down and list all the things that you do, and then take those things and put them into 4 quadrants. One quadrant is love great. Another quadrant's like good, don't like good, and then don't like not good. And what you do is you find all the things that you're not good at and get rid of those things, delegate them. Hire a virtual assistant, delegate them to another team, delegate them to somebody else that reports to you. So that clarity break and delegate elevate, that is a superpower in companies that run EOS, and I encourage people to do that on a regular basis.
Yeah, when I was getting started, I would have 100 things to do because it was just originally it was just me, And then eventually I kind of built a small team. But I would have 100 things to do. I couldn't do 100 things. So I would pick the 10 things that I really was good at that I wanted to do. I get that done. And then eventually there's 90 more things that I have to do. So I'd pick the next 10 that I didn't hate so much. But eventually I got down to a list of all the things I'm not good at that I hate to do, right? And it was easy. As long as other things came in, I would just reprioritize it and go, this will have to wait because I got this and this is fun. And that's when I kind of realized, when I got my list down to maybe 30 core things that I just could not possibly do, that I needed help and I needed to bring in the talent, whether full-time or fractional. Last question for us. You're very entrepreneurial. You've been, from your paper route to all the things you've done in corporate world and now Derr Consulting. When you were younger, maybe on your paper route or early in your corporate life, how did you define success and how do you define it today?
When I was early on, I defined success as having an office.
As
Having an
opposed to a
office
bicycle, right?
having an office and having a title. I mean, that was very important to me, to have the title, the VP title, and then having my own private office where I could meet with people. And then it, scaled to where the telecom company I worked for, we had a beautiful 3-story building, and I had an office with a balcony over a beautiful downtown Fairhope, Alabama. And that was a wonderful time to be able to go sit on that balcony and work in the spring or the fall. Now I define success as freedom. Money is great. I like making money. I enjoy the wealth that the business creates, but the freedom to do the work that I love to do and get rid of the stuff that I don't like to do. I mean, my wife and I, recently, sounds crazy, we recently delegated house cleaning to a service that comes in every couple of weeks. And when we did that, it was like, wow, this is great. We don't have to worry about this anymore. Somebody else can do this. So the freedom is more important to me than anything right now. I actually do not have an office anymore. I float around to different employees.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny?
I don't. I'm in a co-working space in a soundproof booth right now in a co-working space, and I have a desk out there in the co-working space, but I do not have an office anymore. And it is perfect. It's great. I love it. So.
You exchanged your first view of success, an office and a title, with freedom.
Yes.
And now you can do anything. You could have an office or a title if you wanted it.
Sure.
You have the freedom to do that.
Yep.
So that's a big lesson there. I think that's really important for my audience to hear. By the way, I asked that question. That's always the last question I ask every guest I've had. So you're the 28th person to answer that question. And no one has had the same definition of success. It's all morphed. It's always come, slightly higher level, which is good because usually the most common first answer is money, right? And then it usually morphs into something like freedom or some version of that, because freedom incorporates money to do what you want, to have the freedom to do what you want to do. But it also, it takes the shackles off. It allows you to maybe just not have to be there every second. I mean, there's so many ways to define freedom. And I do think that that's the ultimate goal of starting a business, is to get the freedom that maybe a 9-to-5 corporate world job wouldn't get you. It might get you the money. It might get you the office. It might get you the title and the fancy business cards, maybe a company car, or, whatever. It can get you nice things. Nothing wrong with that. But I think ultimately the highest definition of freedom comes from running your own business and having an input on your destiny, and not just like a pinball in a pinball machine where it's bumping off all the different things and the flippers and all that. It going where it's going, and it doesn't have a lot of say. I think when you have a business, the only bumpers and flippers it sees are ones you create, and once you realize how to control that environment, then the ball can go straight to where it's intended to go. To totally abuse that analogy. Well, Forrest
Yeah.
Derr, if my audience would like to get more information on Forrest and where to find him, I will put the company Derr Consulting, the URL, on
Yep.
our show notes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, look down where it says see more, and you'll see information on how to get a hold of Forrest and his company. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, of course, when it's safe to do so, look at your podcast app, look at the show notes, and that information will be there as well. Forrest, I wish you nothing but success. Good luck. It's not too often I get to talk to someone early in their business. Usually it's many years into it. But is it okay if I check back with you in the next, in the foreseeable future, and we'll keep an eye on you and see how you're doing?
I would love that. That'd be great. I appreciate you taking a chance on me.
Well, I think you bring a lot of value to me and my audience. My only regret is that I didn't know you 33 years ago. Of course, you were just flinging papers 33 years ago, so you wouldn't have been much help. Yeah. But I didn't know what you know 33 years ago, because it would have fast-tracked where I am today. But thank you for being my guest. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A special thanks to Forrest Derr for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, which I'm excited to share with you. So don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're an entrepreneur or know of an entrepreneur who would like to be a guest on the show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest or to recommend a guest. Just remember, though, that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. And once again, that's Conrad spelled with a K. And a little shameless plug, if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback as well as a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook, available on both Audible and Amazon. That's it for the plugs. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.